You're listening to the Oneofus.net podcast network. Remember a while back somebody put out, I don't even remember what it was, a Wes Anderson, like a parody if he did a horror movie, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is like Wes Anderson's Escape from New York.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of have hope now that Wes Anderson's just going to go from genre movie to genre movie and do his thing.
This is so cyberpunk. I've been wanting to say that for months.
It's Cyberdog.
Yeah, it is.
This is also his version of samurai films, which is
Yeah.
an interesting take, because I'm sure somebody who's really steeped in Japanese cinema is going to catch a whole lot of references that I didn't. I mean, I did catch the multiple times using the Seven Samurai theme, which was cool.
There's a lot of sort of like the dogs being kind of Ronins, masterless samurai.
It's not that they're servile, but they're servile in the way that samurai are servile.
Which is a cool way to be servile.
Which is the cool way to be
If you want to be servile, here's how you do it. Be like dogs.
You have to swear that solemn oath, that vow.
Stupid cats.
Yeah, and cats are evil. Basically, Wes
Chris,
Anderson hates cats.
Are you a dog person?
No, I'm not. I'm a cat person, and I've just decreed now.
You're an evil mayor.
Yeah, I'm going to kill all the dogs.
No, not Kobayashi.
No, this movie is clearly just propaganda against cats, and I condemn it. We're talking about Isle of Dogs. I'm Chris.
Marco.
I'm Beau.
Miguel.
And I'm Zach.
Yeah, this is Wes Anderson returning to, only for the second time, as far as I know, unless there's some shorts I'm unaware of doing stop motion animation. And I'll say, obviously, Fantastic Mr. Fox I thought was terrific. I love that movie. Even people I know who don't generally get into Wes Anderson films were like, that's a great movie. It's
accessible, yeah.
And this movie, while it certainly is using to some degree similar styles of the stop animation used there, it's breaking a lot of new ground as well. Nobody animates a film like Wes Anderson animates a film.
Absolutely.
It's like mixtures of so many things.
Yeah, there's like all these explosions and like what materials is he using? Is it like cotton? Yeah, and then like a little bit of smoke and cotton, and the effects are so good.
I do love that all the television monitors switch over to 2D animation.
Yeah, they're all doing it in the style of traditional Japanese illustrations. Whenever it's like it totally switches the style when you're watching a character on TV where it looks like an old Japanese painting.
And there's a couple of old Japanese movies. They're like horror. They're black and white, and I forget what they're called, but
Omibaba.
yeah, is that the one where
Onibaba is one of them.
Where they're like in the rice stalks, and it's just swaying the whole time. Yeah. So I noticed that they made the rice stalks or whatever those plants are black and white. And then they had the colored dogs, and I was like, it really reminded me of that movie. I was like,
even the black and white television sometimes has splashes of color. And I think one of the interesting things he does with this is he starts off saying that this is 20 years into the future. Yet the future looks a whole lot like the 1960s.
Yeah, it looks like the golden age of Japanese New Wave cinema.
It does.
Which is probably the only thing that
with student protests and everything.
That Wes Anderson knows about Japanese culture comes from this.
Yeah, all right. So the plot, which I would bother getting started, except Beau's just going to take over anyway, so we'll just let Beau do it anyway.
Oh, God. What happened in this? So, yeah, it is in the future. It's in a fictional town. It's a Megasaki or Magasaki, one of the two, kind of a portmanteau, and the principal antagonist, who, speaking of references, is kind of a spot-on older Toshiro Mifune type. Is and the prequel to all of this, they give you a little prologue that's very much a Japanese legend about this family that the family loved cats and they hated dogs, and this was back when all the dogs in Japan were feral, and so they went on this war of attrition against the dogs, and just as they were about to wipe out the last pack, this boy samurai hero appears, and he says, I disavow humanity, and I'm a dog, and he saves them, and in effect does domesticate them. And the family that started out on its war of attrition vows revenge, and that's the Kobayashi family, who's the family of the antagonistic mayor, and basically he has cooked up unbeknownst to many people, he's cooked up a plot to discredit dogs, and they've introduced viruses. And they're like, this is a public health threat, and I'm going to keep the province safe. We're going to exile the entire canine population of the province to this island that we've been building out of trash that is very disaster prone, and we'll ship all the dogs out there, and hopefully that will take care of that.
Somewhere in the UK, I believe there is actually, because I only know this from a Doctor Who episode, there is an actual Isle of Dogs. That's basically just a trash dumping.
It's right next to the Isle of Man, and they're very good friends.
The best of friends.
It's that island's best friend. It's true. Yeah, and meanwhile, there's a small boy who crash lands on the island who it turns out to be the distant nephew of the current prime minister, who has said, "Fuck all that. You took my dog. I want my dog back. I'm going to the island for the dog." And he teams up with a group of scrappy dogs that's kind of we used to be formally domesticated, but they're led by Bryan Cranston, who is the one who is like a street dog, who's kind of led by them anyway. He thinks he's the
There's a whole lot of plot to lay out here.
Yeah, and
it's a rather simple story.
It's a super simple story.
He's the natural leader, and he's
the alpha dog.
He's the alpha dog, but he kind of says like, no, we're a pack. We vote on things.
With the other dogs being Ed Norton, Bill Murray, Jeff Goldblum, and Bob Balaban, which in and of itself is I would watch in any context in a movie.
Jeff Goldblum was awesome.
Yeah, he's delivering.
I love Jeff Goldblum.
The voice cast is great, and they really do. When you hear about who's in this, you think it's kind of going to be very, very focused on these dogs doing bits, and it's not at all that. This is very much a fairy tale hero's journey, and it follows that. And the dogs they're very much like they find this kind of deposed lord in the form of this little pilot kid, and they become his samurai bodyguard that are going to try to help him on his quest.
Yeah, as they journey across the mountains of garbage and the various islands that all have their own sort of unique distinction of what it used to be.
One of the best bits is that the island has been hit by volcanic eruption, earthquake, tsunami, pretty much anything bad that can happen.
Volcano that triggered a tsunami, triggered the earthquake. So it's a bad place.
And yet they keep putting things there, like they put a garbage treatment plant, and that didn't work. So they put a country club, and that didn't work. And then they put an amusement park, and that didn't work.
So you might say the island has gone to the dog.
Yeah, you might indeed. And part of the pleasure of this movie is there's a lot of different small characters in here, and just seeing all the actors that show up to voice it. One of my favorite being Tilda Swinton voicing this little pug dog that they call Oracle, who's like, she can see the future. It's like, no, she just understands television.
And her eyes are all like bug-eyed. Yeah. It's super cute.
It is this weird thing where dogs in this world are obviously anthropomorphized to a great degree, and they do dog things, and yet there are other times when they do things that are distinctly only ever would happen in a Wes Anderson film. Like, I want to live in a world where dogs whistle back to you, but apparently that only exists in Wes Andersonville.
Well, a lot of things I wish that they were the way they were only exist in Wes Andersonville. So, it's one of those things I've made my peace with it to some extent. I think that this movie moves really fast. It incorporates a lot of different things from Japanese culture in a very interesting way that they all fuse together. And ultimately, I kept coming back to, it's a post-apocalyptic film. I mean, it is and it isn't. It's just like the way that the world these dogs exist in is very much informed by post-apocalyptic movies.
Yeah. And I'm going to be one of the people who didn't like the Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Whoa.
Oh, wow.
But
you're that 1% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I didn't love it. I liked it.
The humor was off for me on that one, but the humor on this one was on point. I loved it.
Well, I think that's also because in that case, he was adapting somebody else's story, and that may not have just worked in the translation. This is pretty much uncut Wes Anderson, just animated.
But it's Wes Anderson without having to deal with the confines of reality at all, which he doesn't really deal with much in his later works anyway. But in this, I
think Wes Anderson actually works better, perhaps, in animation. I love Wes Anderson. He's one of those filmmakers that I think is just like, you can genuinely say as an auteur, you watch a few frames and you go, oh, this must be a Wes Anderson film. And some people either love that or hate that.
Yeah, if I get it. If Wes Anderson's style doesn't appeal to you at all.
Sure.
But you can't say anyone else resembles him.
Absolutely.
He's totally his own thing.
You can list all of his influences, and he's never been shy about what those are. But
none of
what
those
comes out
influences
feels like nothing else.
It's a totally unique thing. And this is no exception. I guarantee you've never seen an animated film like this.
No.
You've never seen a film like this.
Yeah,
as much as you can chart its influences, once again, it combines into something that is uniquely, for lack of a better term, Wes Anderson. Yeah. It doesn't really resemble any other Wes Anderson film, and yet it does too, I think
because the Japanese influence gives it such a new flavor.
Yeah.
And
divided into chapters so it feels like Wes Anderson. And all the voice cast of people you expect to hear in a Wes Anderson film doing Wes Anderson-y type dialogue. Yeah. But the plot is really something we've never seen him really screw around with before, as we said. And it moves quickly. It's very funny.
It's really funny.
Yeah, very funny. Yeah.
I'll say one. Sorry,
I kept cutting you guys off.
What I want to say is that the humor is there, and the cast, the voice cast is amazing. But without this I give it up to the animators.
The sight gags are great.
Yeah, it's great.
The design's wonderful.
Yeah. Same. I believe it's the same team who worked on that. But it says strongly influenced by Rankin Bass, which is not a huge shocker.
Sure.
I mean, that's always been. He seems to be like the one guy still animating in that style.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that I've always said that my favorite Wes Anderson film to date is Rushmore. And it's the last film where I think it still kind of feels like it's in the real world, only heightened. After that, he gets to, I think, his first major peak, which is Royal Tenenbaums. And suddenly you are in Wes Andersonville. Now he has the budget, the clout, the cast to really just create that vision.
We can live in his dreams.
Exactly. I love that little bit where it still feels like a real world. I think the thing of what I really like about this is it's so artificial. For the first time in animation, the artificiality sells the Wes Anderson Wes Anderson universe better than live action does.
I do think he does a lot of interesting things as a director in this. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of really cool shots where we'll have like one dog really close to the screen on the left-hand side, and then the rest of the action's happening way in the rest of the frame.
I mean, it's very Kurosawa.
It's Kurosawa.
Yeah, it's very
Kurosawa. Kurosawa.
But you've never seen that in an animated film before. Yeah. It's like, and it's striking.
Well, and you need, you need that the fact that this is claymation, and so you do have that 3D element. You need that depth for that shot to really work, and it does magnificently.
Also in here, Scarlett Johansson, Harvey Keitel, F. Murray Abraham, Yoko Ono
as Yoko Ono,
Ken Watanabe, Fisher Stevens, Liev Schreiber, Courtney B. Vance. Roman Coppola, Angelica Houston.
Willem Dafoe wasn't in this.
Yeah, it does feel like a film Willem Dafoe would have.
I kept waiting for like a Willem Dafoe cameo.
Or, what's this? Jason Schwartzman, who actually helped Wes Anderson come up with the story, but does not appear in the cast.
Yeah.
Strangely enough.
I'm okay with that.
You don't like Jason Schwartzman?
He doesn't have to be in everything.
No, he doesn't. Yeah. He doesn't. But he seems like Anderson is a guy always works well.
Yeah, I loved him in Fantastic Mr. Fox. He's like one of the best voices in that movie. Come on.
Once again. Go back to Fantastic Mr. Fox.
That's what
I do find, I've revisited that movie a lot, and it really holds up well.
Okay. All right, so let's go to final thoughts. Zach, why don't you get us started?
Well, I love this movie. It's like science fiction-y. It's got dogs in it.
Is it good science fiction?
It's smart science fiction?
It's smart.
It's not dumb?
It's not for you dummies. All right?
I don't think well, never mind. I'm not going to interrupt. I'm not going to criticize the science of a cartoon animated stop motion.
No, it's just a great hero's journey. It's a great little adventure quest. My one critique is that I wanted a little bit more of the 4 other dogs that aren't Bryan Cranston. I want a little bit more of their interaction, and towards the end of it, they're kind of pulled back a little bit, and it focuses more on the boy and
Bryan Cranston.
Bryan Cranston's character, which is
No, Spots is Liev Schreiber.
Oh, dude, get in the game. Come on, man.
Chief.
He's not a dog person.
That's all right. I'll let it go.
And it's funny because Bryan Cranston is like out of this cast.
He's the new addition.
He's the one guy who hasn't really worked with Anderson before, but he ends up kind of being very much.
At first, I thought he was Clooney. And I was like,
I did too.
Why did I think this was George Clooney? I didn't think he was in this. And I was like, oh.
I thought Liev Schreiber was Willem Dafoe.
Now that
I thought Willem Dafoe was. I thought it was. Wait, that's hard to tell.
I thought that was Spots. I don't know. Anyways,
now that George Clooney is married, he's not allowed to play with Wes Anderson.
I guess.
So yeah, I could have used a little bit more of that because what's in there is so great. Like Jeff Goldblum is. It's a reoccurring gag that I don't want to spoil it, but it's really funny. Every time I laughed,
he's the standout of the other dogs.
He provides a lot of exposition, and they actually turn that into a great joke.
The exposition is a joke, and so that's great. I really dug the animation. There were a few moments where I don't know how many. I would assume it's 24 frames a second, but there were a few panning shots where I thought like. I could see like the pan, like I could see the images, the still images. It felt like maybe some of the panning was a little too quick. Mm-hmm. But those are all really minor. I just had a great time, and I'll give it a 9 out of 10 dog eyes that are either swollen or cybernetic.
Miguel?
I really enjoyed this movie. One of the best things I liked about it is it never got too sappy. Whenever it was right to the point where it gets too sappy, they would show you a death or some bones or something, and it would bring it back to reality, which I really appreciate.
There is something about that Rankin Bass style of showing characters cry, where like the tears swelling up over the kind of glassy eye thing, and that always like is the most effective way to show an animated character cry. It gets to you,
and there's enough emotion here without being sappy, which I really liked. So I would give it 9 out of 10 biscuitos.
Oh,
Bisquito.
Yeah, obviously the usual caveat with Wes Anderson films is if he's not your cup of tea, this is probably not going to be your entry-level film. But, I will say that I think that even though this is PG-13 there's a little bit of, like, there's a surgical scene. I think that is mostly what that's derived from. I definitely think that this could be a very entry-level for a younger viewer. And I do think that this is a really great little, bit of mythology. It rings true with, some Japanese mythology that I've read, and obviously you bring in all of that Japanese New Wave influence as well. It's visually stunning. Maybe one of his most stunning films, and that's something that he's in the wheelhouse. So this is very Wes Anderson-y. As Wes Anderson goes along, he just gets more and more like Wes Anderson. And for me, that's always a rich payoff. I really love this. I think animation fans are really going to like it. Wes Anderson fans are going to love it. If you're one of those people that poo-poo stuff for being too clever, this might not be your cup of tea.
Because it's smart science fiction.
It is. It's not for you dummies out there.
It's not for you annihilation.
Exactly. If you've been listening to if you've ever tried to listen to a Decemberist album and found it insufferable, this is not going to be your cup of tea at all. But it's fully within stuff that Beau likes, and so I had a really great time with this. I think that as much as I really liked Fantastic Mr. Fox, the animation in this is just so incredible. And it's far because that was a Roald Dahl adaptation. This is pure Anderson and his writing, writing cronies. and I just really love the end result here. I give it an affectionate 9.5 Wes Andersons out of 10 Wes Andersons.
Nice. Oh, you're going to outdo us, huh?
Yeah, that's it.
Marco?
Yeah.
Well, one thing we haven't even talked about is just how they handle the language issues. Which I think it's really, really
Damn it, I was
smart.
hoping that would be a mind.
That was such a smart thing that I wanted to talk about.
It's incredibly respectful, because when you watch when you see the trailer of this, you're just like, wow, it looks like your protagonists are Japanese, and who's going to be voicing these people?
Are you going to whitewash this? And they don't. And it's very smart. And I won't spoil all the various ways. It's not just one thing. There's multiple ways he gets around that issue.
It's clever, and it constantly keeps finding new ways to do it. So it's almost a gag in and of itself.
Yeah.
But it makes it where the Japanese cast is all voiced by Japanese actors speaking Japanese.
And even when they don't provide a translation, the performances, the animation, you understand what they're talking about. As I said before, there are certain Wes Anderson films I like more than others. I haven't loved them all, but I have liked them all. This one goes very high up to the top of my favorite Wes Anderson films. And I actually think of his 2 animated features, it is by far the best, both on a technical and a storytelling level. It's beautiful to look at. You got a great cast of characters. Jokes actually land. I do feel it was a tad too long. I'm a big fan of Wes Anderson dialogue, but sometimes the languors between the lines sometimes feels a little self-consciously long. I think he could have zipped it up a little bit. That's just my own personal preference. That's really my only major complaint, or minor complaint, I should say. I give this film 9.5 out of 10 grieving distant relations.
I'm so glad there wasn't one of us that's like, I hated it.
We needed one of those people.
You dummies.
Because
who's going to be the heel? Who actually loves it?
This is a movie for people who like stupid dogs.
Listen, this is for all you hipsters who just like anything Wes Anderson craps out.
Because I know you guys are all thinking, it's a movie about dog, it's pro-dog, it's kind of vaguely anti-cat. Chris is going to hate it. Nope, this movie is great. Still hasn't sold me that dogs are better than cats.
It is anti-cat, though.
It's very anti-cat.
I don't think it's that. It's anti-people who like cats.
Yes,
that's right. The cats never do anything bad to anybody. It's the people
They
who
sit there looking
cats
super
don't
evil.
Kill people.
Hey,
people
that's just
with
being a
cats
cat.
kill
That's true. I guess they just did it. That's a normal cat, huh?
I mean, this is charming. It's smart. It's consistently really funny. It's very Wes Anderson, and yet I think there's more than enough here that if you don't consider yourself a Wes Anderson fan, this is something you could really enjoy as well. I've never really seen anything that's like this. I've seen I'm familiar with its influences, never seen anything that put all these things together in quite the way this did. It just kind of mesmerizes and surprises and has little moments that you're kind of enchanted because you're like, oh, what a clever way to do that. You say that to yourself over and over and over again throughout the film. Wow, what a clever way to do that. It's just, it's exciting to watch as such a fully realized project. And I loved the hell out of this thing. I mean, I agree that perhaps it is maybe 10, 15 minutes longer than it needs to be, but that's just barely.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that probably could have been trimmed down a little bit. And I also agree that it would have been nice if the other 4 dogs and the pack
a little bit towards
just
the
a tiny bit more detail.
Maybe
to
a couple more
characters.
gags.
You almost forget Bill Murray's even in the group.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's fucking Bill Murray.
Bill Murray and Bob Balaban are very underutilized.
They're short-shrifted.
If you're going in,
they're basically Wes Anderson's John Ratzenberger.
Yeah.
They just have to be in the movie just to say they did it.
Yeah. But, these are minor quibbles to be sure. I think this is fantastic. I think everyone should see it. And I have no idea what the hell's wrong with Fox Searchlight, who have reduced this nationwide to 27 screens.
Yeah,
trash.
I think the plan is to roll it out further. It actually is getting released in China.
Is it?
Yes, and very, very few films, anybody who knows, they only allow so many American products.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the Chinese and the Japanese have a really weird history.
Yeah, the Chinese will watch this and be like, fucking Japanese.
Well, of course the Japanese would kill the
It's
dog.
a propaganda film against Japan.
But I love this. I will definitely be watching it many more times in my life. I give it 9.5 out of 10 magical cyber dogs. Why not?
Oneofus.net has been your one-stop shop for all things geek for years. But there's a side to them many of you have never heard. The subscription side. Subscribe and listen to great podcasts like The Breakfast Pub, The Original Gentleman, and the Watch a Movie With Us series. Head on over to Oneofus.net and don't forget your towel.